was Jesus talking about when he dropped this camel through the eye of a needle metaphor on his listeners? Is it just hyperbole? We know Jesus liked figures of speech and often spoke in cartoonish images that kind of painted a picture for people and kind of exaggerated the truth. And maybe this is just one of those figures that Jesus is using here to heighten the contrast between my desire to save myself and experiencing the impossible salvation of God. It's possible. It's a very comic, very visual picture. A camel, the average camel, 6 foot tall at shoulder height. So you add the head on, and it's pushing 7 foot. It also weighs on average about 1,000 pounds for a Middle Eastern dromedary, Middle Eastern camel. So that's quite possible that Jesus was trying to paint this picture of a massive beast being squeezed through a little needle. C.S. Lewis used to talk about this imagery that Jesus used by saying, picture how the camel feels, squeezed out in one long bloody thread from tail to snout. It is a comical picture. And, again, this 1,000-pound animal being squeezed through the eye of a needle, normally less than a half an inch wide, even the large ones. Well, it's not the only interpretation. Some scholars think that Jesus here is referring to something very particular. In fact, they think that the city walls of Jerusalem would be closed, the gates of Jerusalem would be closed at night to stop marauding invaders from attacking. And that way a large mass of people couldn't rush through one of the gates. And so they would close and lock those gates. But they understood every once in a while they would have someone who, for various emergency needs, would have to get into the city. And so they had what some called the eye of the needle, the smaller gates, or at least one smaller gate, that people could go to, and they would allow one person or a couple of people and their camels squeezed down and pushed through after you unload all the stuff off it and then all your baggage through. You could get into the city. I don't know. I really don't know which is true. I don't know which is the simplest explanation. And it doesn't really make a difference to me when I read this passage. Jesus' point was, whether it's a giant beast squeezed through a little sewing needle, or whether it's an individual trying to get all of his stuff through this small gate entry into the city, the point is, it's impossible. Notice that in the text there. It's a key word there. Impossible. Impossible to force a giant mass through a tiny hole, whether it's a gate or a needle. Jesus is talking here about salvation quite clearly with the disciples. And he's telling them that the camel's too big. It's too big. Humans are incapable of squeezing themselves through the eye of salvation. We're just too baggage laden to get that done. Our baggage is too great. We can't squeeze through. And that's Jesus' point concerning this rich young ruler. He tries to squeeze through. He actually has the arrogance when Jesus says, well, keep all the commandments. He's like, yeah, I've done that. It's funny, Jesus recounts those. And I want you to notice in this text here, the moral commandments, the 5 commandments, moral behavior. He leaves one off. Did you notice which one? It appears to be the one that this man was struggling with. Covetousness. Don't covet your neighbor's stuff. This was a covetous man, a rich camel of a man unwilling to shed his financial baggage. And so Jesus asked him to do just that. Okay, if you want to try and save yourself, you're going to have to be perfect. So get everything you got, give it away, give it to the poor, and come and follow me. And the man walks away sadly, because it's impossible for humans to save themselves. Now, as we conclude, I want you to think about this. There are 2 kinds of people in the world. There are people who think that certain things are impossible, and there are people who realize that with God all things are possible. Salvation can only come as an impossible gift purchased by Jesus' sacrifice on the cross. Not because we goolly squeezed ourselves through a tiny hole. That's impossible. We can't do it. Not without the massive damage to the camel. We must ask God in his mercy to do the impossible through Jesus' death and resurrection. And so the question for you this morning is, have you done this? Or are you still trying to squeeze through? More church, give more money, serve more, whatever it is. Or are you asking God to do the impossible?